good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series and Podcast. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We're pleased to have Elisabeth Sabaditsch-Wolff, an anti-Islamist activist, join us to discuss when speech ceases to be free. Ms. Sabaditsch-Wolff will speak for 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A from the audience. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I'll turn the discussion over to Ms. Elisabeth Sabaditsch-Wolff.
Thank you so much for this introduction, Stacey. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and everyone with us today listening to the Middle East Forum webinar. Before I start, I have to extend my thanks to the Middle East Forum and my deepest appreciation to Daniel Pipes and the Middle East Forum, because what I'm about to tell you, this fight for free speech in Austria and by extension in Europe, could not have happened. I could not have taken this case all the way to the European Court of Human Rights without the assistance of the Middle East Forum. So thank you very much for that. I also want to extend a warm greeting from Vienna, Austria, to my favorite rabbi, Rabbi Jonathan Hausman, whose, I think, mother actually hailed from Vienna, Austria, and I'm so grateful for your friendship and support as well. My presentation today, of course, concerns freedom of speech, which is an incredibly important topic, not least because right now we are witnessing with the attack of Hamas on innocent Israelis a renewed discussion about the quote-unquote extent of freedom of speech and how and where it should be curtailed. But before we get to that discussion, I would like to, for those of you who have not heard of my story of how I lost my freedom of speech, I'd like to just quickly let you know who I am and what I'm actually fighting for, what my life is about. So just very, very quickly, I am the daughter of an Austrian diplomat who's since retired. I grew up in New York, Chicago, Iran during the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And I also attended grade school and some of high school in Chicago, Illinois, where I was introduced to the greatest political document ever written, which is the United States Constitution. And studying the Constitution gave me an immense, deep appreciation of the freedoms enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution. And of course, we in Europe, in particular in Austria, we do not have anything like that, as I was going to experience later on. So I graduated high school in 1989 and then went to Kuwait and worked at the Austrian Embassy in Kuwait, where I experienced August 2nd, 1990, the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein. I was held as a hostage for about three and a half weeks. You can read about these experiences in my book called Truth Was My Crime, which we can also discuss later. I returned to Kuwait in 1997 and experienced Islam firsthand, of course, as a young adult. I was 25. And as such, I found out actually that the Islamic prophet Muhammad married a young girl named Aisha at the age of 6 and consummated the marriage at the age of 9, which deeply shocked me. But thank God I did not look at this travesty in any way, because that would have gotten me expelled from Kuwait. So fast forward to 2006-07, when I had already received gotten my degree, Master of Arts in Diplomatic and Strategic Studies. I also married and had a daughter. And I realized that Europe, the society of Europe had changed due to the influx of mostly Muslim migrants into Austria due to the Bosnian War. And Austria took in a large number of Bosnian Muslim refugees. And as a result, of course, the social fabric of Austria changed dramatically. Not only did I find friends and like-minded people in the US, but I was also tasked by the Austrian Freedom Party, a party which Daniel Pipes calls a civilizationist party, defending Western civilization. I was asked to put together, because of my increased interest and studies in Islamic theology and Islamic history and whatever has to do with Islam as such, I was asked to put together a seminar, a 3 times 4-hour seminar, so 12 hours in total for the political party. I have to add that I'm not a member of any political party. It just happened to be the Freedom Party that asked me to do that. And I taught for 2 years these seminars. And at one of these seminars, a young journalist infiltrated, surreptitiously recorded the seminar and had a transcript taken to the public prosecutor's office, public prosecutor immediately pressed charges for hate speech. That was in 2009. In 2010, I stood trial for the first time for hate speech, and it became very clear from the very beginning that there was no hate speech. You're going to wonder what I actually said. I will get to that in a moment. During the proceedings, the judge, at her own discretion, which is allowed under Austrian court procedures, added another charge, which was denigration of religious teachings of a legally recognized religion in Austria, which Islam is, together with all the other major religions. So this is a very special status for a religion in Austria. No other country on this planet has this acceptance, quote unquote, of a religious group. If you want to know more about that, I also have a special section in my book describing the reason for that. It has to do with Emperor Joseph II and his tolerance of both people of the Jewish faith and Lutherans in the, if I remember correctly, 18th century. So I knew right away that I would have no chance to win this case, even if I had Mohammed and Aisha present to testify. And so it came. I actually was found guilty of denigration of religious teachings of a legally recognized religion in Austria for saying the following words. So you have to imagine 12 hours of what I said in these lectures and seminars were deemed okay, but one sentence, which was actually a rhetorical question, was actually actionable under the law, and it went as follows. In the full knowledge that it is prohibited in Austria to utter the following words, Mohammed is a pedophile, which I would never do, because I am currently in Austria and I would never say these words. I asked the rhetorical question, what do we call this behavior? I.e., Mohammed marrying a 56-year-old man, marrying a 6-year-old and consummating, quote unquote, consummating the marriage at the age of 9. What do we call it if not pedophilia? Now, the judge, on purpose, misunderstood me. She wanted to misunderstand me. It was my intention to ask, well, accepting the fact that I cannot call this pedophilia, granted, I'm looking for another word, because we have to call a spade a spade. If we have to call a behavior that is abhorrent in the Western world, in Judeo-Christian societies, Judeo-Christian based societies, what do we call it? And the judge said that this was unacceptable, and I can't do that. My lawyer and I immediately appealed, and a year later, the appeals judge argued that while it is factually, historically correct that Mohammed married Aisha, it is an excess of opinion to call this pedophilia. I must not call it that. I know that many Americans listening right now will be rolling their eyes, shaking their head and thinking, how can this be an excess of opinion? If you were raised in the tradition of the First Amendment, of course, it is horrific, and it comes with a lot of consequences. In any case, my fight continued. We're now in 2012, and my lawyer and I appealed all the way up to the Austrian Supreme Court. And the Austrian Supreme Court finally said that everything is all right. The lower courts did a fine job, but they would like to have the European Court of Human Rights, which is a supranational court, decide whether Articles 9 and 10 of the European Convention, Human Rights Convention, if they are balanced or not. The European Convention being a sort of quote-unquote constitution, or maybe Bill of Rights of the European Union, which of course in Europe's case is not granted by the creator, but granted by those in power, as we will see. So Articles 9 and 10 are freedom of expression versus freedom of religion, and whether or not these two are balanced by what the lower courts decided. So it took another 6 years and a lot of fundraising for me to be able to fight this. The European Court of Human Rights, again, this is not a European Union court. This is a court whose jurisdiction goes all the way to freedom-loving countries like Tajikistan and Azerbaijan. So you can probably also already imagine how this went. So in October of 2018, exactly 5 years ago, the verdict came from the European Court of Human Rights, and this court deemed that, in essence, my right to freedom of speech weighs less than a Muslim's right not to be offended. And I will give you the exact words because they are important. The court found that the domestic courts in Austria carefully balanced the right to freedom of expression with the rights of others to have their feelings protected and to have religious peace preserved in Austrian society. So according to the European Court of Human Rights, freedom of expression is not absolute, but should be balanced against the right of others to have their religion's feelings protected and to have the religious peace preserved in Austria. Now, this is egregious on so many levels, which I will not get into. We can get into that in the discussion. What I want to tell you is that this ruling by the European Court of Human Rights is problematic because, one, it has already been used as case law in a case in Algeria against a Muslim who blasphemed against Islam, and he was found guilty based on this judgment. And we see many other cases, such as the recent case of a Finnish pastor and former member of parliament who had to stand trial for hate crimes, and the prosecutor argued that while it is factually correct what she said, while it might be correct what she's factually correct what she said, which is that homosexuality, the Bible, the Christian Bible does not condone homosexuality. While this is factually true, it does hurt the feelings of those who engage in homosexuality. So we're seeing this exact my judgment replicated 5 years later in other court cases. And this is, of course, very troublesome. We also have to realize that there have been many people who have since criticized Islamic practices, but that since my case was adjudicated, no one has said anything against Islam and child marriages or pedophilia in Islam ever since. So this topic was chilled by my court case. And we're seeing the problems, of course, because child marriages are still taking place under the guise of Quran 33:21. That's where Allah supposedly says, you have in Muhammad the perfect example for all mankind. And since Muhammad, as we know from the Austrian court and from the judges, that Muhammad, it is a historical fact that Muhammad married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage when she was 9. We have to assume that older men who marry 6-year-olds are following the practices of the Prophet Muhammad. This is very troublesome, and I am, to this day, I am extremely saddened by this wrong and horrific judgment, because I wanted to protect young girls. That's what I was actually trying to do. I was not trying to denigrate anyone or any prophet, since the Prophet Muhammad is not my prophet. I don't deal in denigration. I deal in facts and trying to explain to people what is going on. I'm actually searching for the truth. And in this case, I did speak the truth, but of course I had no chance to win this case. And as I had to learn, truth is no defense. Quickly also, we are now seeing America as a ground zero, a kind of ground zero for total war and free expression. We saw that during the COVID times. I go into that in my book as well. I look at the censorship. We're seeing that self-evident truths are now subjective, individual versions of truth. That is very concerning. We're also seeing that truth is dismissed as misinformation. We're seeing that normality is demonized as oppression, and perversion is normalized as liberation. We're also seeing, very unfortunately, since October 7th and the atrocities that happened were perpetrated by Hamas on innocent Israelis, that unfortunately the slogan, "Never forget," isn't a passive slogan of remembrance anymore. It means never again allowing the worst of humanity's conduct. This concept demands recognizing and defying the elements of emerging totalitarian stratagems. An effort to prevent the present situation from devolving into extremely inhumane and destructive behavior must include the examination of present similarities to historical trends. And yet mainstream media shames free thinkers who dare mention Nazi atrocities and downplay the repercussions of censorship. And my final words here before I take questions is, we should be aware that first we overlook evil, then we permit evil, then we legalize evil, then we promote evil, and then we celebrate evil. And once that is done, we persecute those who still call it evil. And I think this is the best way to end my presentation. And I'm very much looking forward to taking your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I wish my video was on so you can see my expressions through all that. My head just like exploded. Wow. All right. We have quite a few questions coming in.
I can imagine.
First one's from Larry White asking, how do courts reconcile the decision in your case with national laws that establish the minimum age of 18 for a marriage to be freely entered into? And Wayne Gradman follows up with, is it legal for an older man to marry a young woman in Austria today?
Well, let me take the second question first. Of course, it's legal for an older man to marry a younger woman. It just depends on how young the girl is. And I mean, I think we can all agree that a 56-year-old marrying a just the concept of the word marriage in this case, I think we should really not even use that word. A marriage implies to me love and acceptance. And I don't think a 6-year-old, I mean, we all know that a 6-year-old cannot enter a contract, which a marriage really is. And a contract comes with duties. And a 6-year-old is incapable of doing that. Let's even put aside the bodily autonomy of a 6-year-old that cannot decide that. So what was the first question again?
Sorry. How do courts reconcile the decision in your case with national laws that establish the minimum age of 18 for marriage?
They don't. This is a religious matter. And unfortunately, Germany has recently accepted marriages that took place outside of Germany, but where the groom and the young bride came to Germany, they've allowed for that. They actually gave legal, it's now legal for Muslims who got married outside to young girls, and in this case, I would say under the legal age of 18. And that's, I guess, how they try to square a circle, and it's tragic.
Of course, yes. Lawrence Julius asks, does this ruling create effectively a blasphemy law, and can this rule be used to protest Islamist extremism from legitimate criticism?
There should be legal. We should be allowed to protest that. And we can't. And yes, of course, the answer is absolutely. There are blasphemy laws in Europe. It's not a secret. And the denigration of religious teachings is, of course, a blasphemy law. Nowadays, it's not called blasphemy law, but it still is a blasphemy law. And it's very interesting to see who this law actually applies to. It's, of course, never Muslims against Christians and Jews. It's always the other way around. And that's what's, blasphemy needs to be removed. This is so, I would, let me call it facetiously, old school. We are an enlightened society, at least we think we are, and we should not be engaging in blasphemy laws. This is for a different time and a different place, not in liberal democracies, but it goes to show that we're actually not living in liberal democracies.
Absolutely not. Jeff Billingham asks, have any Muslims in Austria publicly expressed any criticism of Judaism and Christianity, and were they charged under the same law you were?
A resounding no, of course not. You have to also remember that the laws are in effect. I mean, apart from the blasphemy law, the laws are very, very strict in Austria. The problem is that the police are not enforcing these laws. You have every single day, almost now because of the war, Hamas demonstrations or pro-Palestinian demonstrations, which, let me add in parentheses, I am absolutely in favor of taking place, because this is actually the litmus test of how much of a free speech, I call myself a free speech fundamentalist. That's how much I absolutely am in favor of these demonstrations. But in Austria, you must draw the line when these people chant Jews to the gas, because under law, this is different in the United States, because your Supreme Court has a very, very narrow corridor of what is not allowed to be said. But in Austria, under the very strict laws that followed the National Socialist era, or dictatorship, I'm sorry, you are not permitted to chant Jews to the gas. And the police are not enforcing this. This is very strict. But of course, it's always the right-wing extremists who are the present danger to society. It's not the quote unquote activist chanting Haiba Haiba, the Muhammad's army is coming for you again. I'm paraphrasing here.
This is scary times for sure. All right. So Steve asks, if a phobia is defined as an irrational fear, the rational concept about Islam is not Islamophobic. How can we make this point and subject Islam to justifiable or deserved scrutiny?
Well, I mean, I'm all for what you said. I mean, of course, Islamophobia is an irrational fear, but Islamophobia is actually, I mean, if they're out to kill you, there is a rational fear. And the whole concept of Islamophobia, I mean, this bears actually, we actually should have a webinar only on Islamophobia, because there's so much to talk about. And I personally have, together with my friend Steve Coughlin and other freedom fighters at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, we have been instrumental in pushing back this Islamophobia narrative. again, this also would be a topic for another webinar, so I can explain to you what we actually did in Warsaw, Poland. Islamophobia is a narrative to shut opinion down, and it comes from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. It is a narrative driven by by the OIC itself, helped by useful idiots on the political left, to silence criticism. And of course, silencing criticism comes directly from Islamic scripture.
And I think we were seeing that today for sure. So Barry Werner, going back to your book, are you allowed to write the truth in a serious book, but not speak it out loud?
That's another very good question. I don't really know. I haven't tried it. The book that I published, I didn't publish it in Austria. I self-published in the United States, and it is not available in German for good reason. And of course, everything I wrote in that book is basically with I would say, half self-censorship. So nothing in the book is actionable because I merely reported on what happened to me. But of course, look, self-censorship. And that's what's so dangerous about these times, that I am currently in Austria, not in the United States, where I have to self-censor.
Absolutely. Paul asks, how do you respond to those who now, in the name of free speech, would criticize university administrators for questioning or criticizing Hamas supporters on and off campus?
Well, I mean, criticism is what we're looking for, right? What we want is a robust debate about those chanting, Jews to the gas and from the river to the sea. Let's have a debate, and not, we definitely should not shut these people down. Again, I am all for free speech, and we should debate these people. They have a right to chant that. Do we find it abhorrent? Absolutely. They might find abhorrent what you and I are just discussing. And that is what free speech is about. We don't shut down free speech. I also believe we should not ban the Quran, just as, well, what I was going to say, I will self-censor in this case. But we shouldn't ban books. Let's leave it at that. And we shouldn't ban anything except for a very narrow corridor as defined by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you. An anonymous attendee states, your final list was very moving. How do you think we can unwind the clock and go back to the days when common sense and the understanding of the difference between good and evil were taken for granted?
Well, I mean, first of all, we need to all agree on the fact that there is only a man and a woman and nothing in between. We actually have to go back to, like this anonymous commenter said, common sense. And that means voting accordingly, voting people into office. And I'm not talking about one year from today, voting in a president. That actually means tomorrow, going to vote tomorrow for those who are sensible, common sense people on your school boards. Okay, that's where it starts. That's the beauty of the American political system. It doesn't start up where the president is. It doesn't start up there. You need to start at the very, very bottom, because the school boards are the ones who ultimately decide what your children are going to learn. And that's where the rot actually starts. If children are taught that there are genders, more than two genders, and that, the truth is something that is fluid, we're going to have a bigger problem we're going to have a bigger problem in the coming years than we even envisage today. So go to the polls, cast your ballots tomorrow, and stand up for what is true and what is right, and keep searching for the truth. Don't take anything that I say for granted. Go check it out. I'm not here to tell you that I am the truth. I'm not Jesus Christ or anyone like that. I am just merely telling you what I have found out, but I am also still searching. That is what we need to tell our children. It starts with our children. That's where it needs to start. And the hate also, the hate for the other starts in the family. We need to stop that.
Absolutely powerful words to end on there. But before we do go, can you please tell us again where we can find some more of your work, your book? And
yes, I have a website accompanying my book, and it's called truthwasmycrime.com. And I am not on social media for obvious reasons, but anything of relevance is posted on Truth Was My Crime. I will be back in the United States in February and March on a book tour. So if anyone would like to book me, please get in touch with the Middle East Forum, and I'm pretty sure they will forward any, contacts. And, since I was silenced here in Europe, especially in Austria, I've made it my mission to educate the American people that while the situation has become a challenge, you still have the freedom to fight for freedom, and that you must never give up. Because just like if Israel falls in the Middle East, there's no place to go. The same goes for America. If America falls, there's no place to go. And that's what Americans need to understand. You have the freedom. You still have it. It's under attack, no doubt about it. But you still have the freedom to fight for freedom. And please, I implore you, you must fight for freedom. I will stand by your side. I will be there for you. And I will continue fighting for freedom. But you also must do your part. Thank you very much.
thank you so much. We here at the Middle East Forum will keep fighting and doing our part as well. So thank you so much. We've come to the close of our webinar. Thank you again, Ms. Sabaditsch-Wolff, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, for our viewers, please join us Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern for Israel Insider with Ashley Perry. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks again.